So what's next? Well, I've sat here for probably, definitely over a year, not made any changes to the system. I got it back together, and then once I got that NAD amp up there, took the HD amp 1 out of the system, there's been no turning back. But there is something that's bothering me and something that I feel it needs to be addressed. So, Kappa 600s. Let's get that flashlight. They had problems with the binding posts. When I tried to hook them up and tighten them down, they would spin. So I knew right away something inside was loose. So the first thing I did was I took the wires off the back of the binding posts and fed them out through the base port. And crimped them to my speaker wires. So it's wire on wire with a crimp band. Then I wrapped them in Teflon tape, and then I slipped a piece of shrink wrap over and put some zip ties on them. And that method's, I can't say that it doesn't change, it doesn't take anything away, but eliminating those binding posts did make a big difference. Now, I don't think it's because they were not good binding posts. I think it's because the way they were hooked up. So it's wire to wire, and then it eventually just works its way into banana plugs into the back of the amp. Well, I've noticed a couple things. Now that I know that the direction of wire makes a big difference, whether it's the ground or the positive wire, I started looking at the wires that lead into the crossover, and I see they're all over the place. I don't even think they were paying attention. One of them, they have one speaker's one direction, one speaker's the other direction. And for something that made that big of a difference in just the hookup wire, I'm wondering, I need to find out what happens if I take, I'm gonna take these wires and put them right into the crossover. And then I'm gonna, inside the box are the same type of wire. I think this is like monster cable or something. Inside, here's the 10-inch woofer. That, I've looked inside there and I can see that it's that monster type cable that goes up to the crossover. The crossover is up in here somewhere. And it took a while to figure out how to get these off, but basically these are rubber plugs. And I have to pop the rubber plug out, and then there's a screw head underneath. And then I think this whole gray piece comes away, and I've seen pictures of the inside, and the crossover's in there. So the plan is to open the top up and cut all the monster cable out and continue the same wiring scheme inside that I have outside with the different gauges. It's not really easy to see it, but the low frequency cables are also one's 14 gauge and one's 16 gauge. Same thing. I got the heavier wire on the negative side. And I want to continue the same scheme inside the cabinet. It's a bit of a speculation, but the thing that's bothering me is, again, with the direction of the wire making that big of a difference from the amp to the speaker, I want to make sure that I have all the grains correct inside the box to match what I'm doing outside the box. I don't really need any more improvement at this point. It doesn't need to sound any better. But I just can't sit still knowing that something is, one of three things is going to happen. It's going to sound worse, it's not going to sound any different, or it's going to sound better. But the overall thing that's going to happen is I'm not going to be wondering what's going to happen if I make all the wires run the way I'm doing my connection wires. Again, it made such a big difference. So that's next. That's why I finally picked the phone up and made some videos, because the weather's going to start getting cool here, and a lot of my, I'm going to turn to the indoors for some projects, and I've been thinking about it, and I've been planning it and acquiring the wire and everything like that. So that's probably going to be the next project. And then maybe if that works out, if that makes any difference. So far, I haven't really molested these Bowers and Wilkins CM1s, and I really don't want to, but I absolutely hate the binding posts that are on these. And what I would really like to do is mount the crossovers externally. What I'm planning on doing is swapping these wire guides out and putting hanging brackets up and actually hanging the crossovers underneath. So I have the wires coming into the crossover, out of the crossover, right into the speakers. And again, it would give me the opportunity to make sure that the wires are all going the direction that makes the most sense to me, that I've seen work in other places. But I want to see what happens when I do it to these first, because these are kind of like, I've already crossed the line with these. So it's the most logical place to start. But the sad thing is, I just don't need any more improvement. I don't even think about, what if I get this component or if I get that component. I know someday I probably will replace the amp up top there, because I just suspect that I could use a couple more watts into these CM1s. But again, I couldn't be happier with the way it sounds. So I don't know. Maybe once I get these open, there's not many pictures of these things open. There's not many good detailed pictures of the insides of these things. So I'm probably going to end up making a video for myself anyway, just so that I have something to refer to when I close them back up again. But beyond that, I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I can throw out there. I talked about the connection to the platform. This was that base. I think in the first video, this was on the floor. And all this did was give me the extension in the back. I was able to move these components out over the shelf. And that gave me just the amount of clearance I needed in the back. Here's another thing that really changed the system. I was always impressed by, oh, this is up at 8 minutes. Hold on.